Okay, we are live. Testing. Testing, testing. There's too much gain. Too much fuzz. Let's see how this sounds. I think it just wasn't close enough. Sounds like ass. Whatever. Check. Check, check, check. Well, I don't know. Sounds shitty on my end, but I don't think it sounds shitty on that end. Why does it sound so bad? Is that any better? Let's see. Not sure. Sounds at least better for me. For now. Whatever. All right. All right. Looks like we're just waiting for Dr. Mike here. And we should be ready to rock. No, let's fuck with this later. Oh, well, that's why. Oh, it does that. 6, son of a bitch. Check. Yeah, that's why. Okay. Ooh. All right, folks, we're just going to give Dr. Mike a minute or two here to log on. If not, I'll get the party started in a few minutes. For now, we're just going to sit tight, hang out. All right, Dr. Mike's texting me here. All right, hopefully he'll be on in a second here. There he is.
Hey.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
that's all good. What's shaking?
Money making.
Ooh, that's the best. That
Yahoo. All right, you want to get started?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Cool. I have a hard cutoff of 9:15, which is 6:15 your time. So
Says the guy who shows up late.
Right? Yeah. That's true. All right. Let's get started. Okay. Michael Karam says, "Hello, doctors. I have a question. When I started my cutting phase on the 3rd of March, I started with 18 sets per. We already saw this one last time.
Oh, did we?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Skip it.
Okay. Daniel Jolly says, did you guys die a little inside when that guy on Reddit AMA said how there are a whole host of benefits to IF, such as autophagy? I didn't see that one, but Reddit in general kills me inside. So
Yes.
he says also, hi, what are your feelings on the top end of the amount of cardio we can do while on a cut? I'm currently in a 5-day microcycle, training 4 and resting 1, walking a bit, a brisk 4 miles, about an hour. And heart rate probably gets to about 100, maybe around 20 in little incline bits. And on my days, on my on days and walking a lot on the off days, I relax 14 to 15 miles, about 3.5 to 4 hours. Heart rate's probably 90, and I get a little cider on the way. Okay.
Nice.
You probably stop doing the cider, and it will help you cut, but that's a personal choice. I have about 4 weeks left, and I'm looking to dial up these volumes a little bit for the last couple of weeks. So I figured my lifting numbers would tell me if I'm pushing too much. Sounds good? Yeah, I think it sounds good. I think you're well within. So I'll say 2 things. I think you're well within the amount of cardio that is considered a robust enough cardio amount to make you lose some extra fat. But you're also, because you're in that range, much more cardio might not give you what you're looking for and might just fatigue you a lot more. If someone told me they walked 4 miles every day, that would be like, yeah, that's kind of enough cardio. Remember, almost all the bodybuilders you ever see, YouTube videos, Flex magazine articles, they're completely sedentary, and then the cardio is the only time they move around other than lifting. So that's sort of who cardio is for. Because you walk so much, I would say adding any more cardio is probably a waste of your time. And in your case, I would probably just drop the carbs by another 50 grams or the fats by as much as your hormones can take and go that way. I honestly think you have a real good solid meat and potatoes amount of cardio. Remember, like we always say, there's a balancing act there, and you want to be right in the middle. James?
Yeah, I think that's good. I would say if you want to go up, you're just going to have to be really diligent with your lifting numbers and stuff. And at some point, like when you're putting in that much, I would, I don't know this to be true, but I would usually say like if you can do that much cardio, you probably have a little bit more gas in the tank for lifting too at that point. So I would say push the lifting a little bit harder, see how much further you can go with the cardio before it really starts to negatively affect your lifting. But yeah, I think it's fine.
Daniel Hacker says, how have your volume landmarks changed for bodybuilding? Since training BJJ 3 to 4 times a week, have they changed at all? Secondly, as you have gotten better and better at BJJ, has that affected your physique, volume, and landmarks? I'll answer 2 questions. One, it's very difficult for me to parse out how they have changed because I've been doing BJJ for 3 to 4 times a week for the last 5 years.
Right.
When I started BJJ, my volume landmarks went down, but they have since then come up due to more intelligent training, more intelligent supplement use. So BJJ has definitely lowered them at first really significantly, and that feeds into your next question. As I've gotten better at BJJ, has that affected my physique, volume, landmarks? It's made them higher because being better at BJJ, I know when to try and when not to try. And in general, the roles are more technical and less life or death. And I'm in better cardiovascular shape, so they don't fuck me up as much. And I do less dumb shit that gets me hurt, or not hurt, but sort of, I don't know, James, if this makes sense, but fucked up where your elbows hurt and your knees hurt because you were grinding shit. It's not an injury. It's just it just beats you up more, right? Less impact.
Wear and tear.
So my BJJ is actually now pretty fluidly compatible with my lifting. I mean, ideally I wouldn't do BJJ at all. My lifting would be fucking amazing, but definitely less now that I've gotten better. And I will say a significant amount when I started, probably at my volume landmarks, my MEVs probably went up by 2 to 4 sets each, and my MRVs probably went down by 4 or 5 sets each muscle. So quite a bit. Yeah, it affects different muscle groups differently. My arms took a real big beating when I started BJJ because you use a lot of your arms. And legs, it didn't change much.
Yeah, Mel has to really take almost all of her direct arm work out doing BJJ just because it gets tendinitis.
Yeah. Next question from Daniel. If an athlete is lifting to improve at his field or combat sport, what's the benefit to narrowing his exercise selection in the weight room as opposed to having multiple movements per movement plane? My first guess, and this is really more of James' question, so I'll just give my little insight and then let James open it up, is an economy of learning, effort, and a needlessness of spending the time to do multiple movements when your weight room work for such sports is, relatively speaking to us folks, bodybuilders, powerlifters, people that train a lot, so small. When your target volume landmark for your lower body is 6 to 8 sets per week of, let's say, pushing style work like quad work, gee, you don't need 4 movements. When it's 20, 25, 30 like a bodybuilder, you might need 4 movements. So James, any thoughts?
Yeah, so right off the bat, Daniel, you gotta I'm gonna take a hard line with you. So you might be confusing the idea of like variation and the idea of specificity. So when you're saying an athlete is lifting to improve at his or her, field or combat sport, you are immediately constrained by the principle of specificity, which says whatever you do has to at least have some positive impact on those outcomes, right? So that immediately narrows down your exercise selection by quite a bit. So if you're thinking like, should I be doing like dumbbell incline stuff for, rugby or versus like this, that, you should pretty much have like 1 or 2 go-to moves that are directly contributing to success per, muscle group in your sport. So there is a benefit to modulating volumes and intensities ultimately, but I don't think there's a huge benefit to necessarily like opening or constricting your exercise selection in the physique sense when applied to field or combat sport. What we're limited here is by specificity. And what Mike said was really good, consolidating like your economy of learning, and of course like things like economy of force and power output are going to be good considerations. But I think you might be thinking of using variation for bodybuilding and confusing that with specificity of training. So I would go back and double check on that before we even go further on that question.
Next question: how important is intensity used in an exercise during a deload? Is there an ideal range? Well, we described deloading, relative ideal ranges in Scientific Principles of Strength Training, Daniel, which you've read multiple times, I think. So it's somewhere between 90% of the intensity that you normally use during training earlier in the week and something like 50%. Again, James and I are pretty clear that those are really, really fungible numbers. It really all depends on a variety of factors. You just got to be less, and especially towards the end of the week, a lot less. So important. Like, put you this way: if you do a 1 rep max during a deload, it's not really a deload anymore, even if it's just 1 rep. If you do like 2 or 3 reps with 15% of your 1 rep max, you're missing out on some fitness characteristic carryover, but that's probably a better option than going super hard. So as long as it's not very hard, the importance is very low.
Yeah, it might be even more profound in other sports like powerlifting and weightlifting, where it's not really a deload if you don't take down the intensity pretty substantially at some point. Whereas like bodybuilding and physique, we definitely recommend you take it down at some point, maybe not in the first part, but definitely in the latter part. Whereas other sports, because it's intensity driven, if you don't modulate the intensity, it's going to be devastating.
Yeah, and I think where Daniel's going with this is volume is the most important, which is totally true. But intensity, especially when you get strong, so for example, like if you take a sort of a noob lifter whose max in the squat is 135, he's usually doing 95 for reps. If he hits 135 in the squat, like the week of the deload, it's really not a big deal. The systemic burden's really low. But like if James does, his squat max, which is over 400 pounds during a deload, Jesus, like 400 pounds beats your ass up. It beats my ass up. I've done it for reps and training a bunch. That's not something I want on my back during a deload.
Yeah,
so when you get really strong, you have to do less relatively.
Like the psychological effort too, like load up that weight. Like, Jesus,
fuck that. Yeah. Next question: how much is an individual missing out on if they train only 2 out of the 3 rep ranges for physique, either the 5 to 10 and 10 to 15, or the 10 to 15 and the 20 to 30? Well, you missed the 15 to 20 there, but 2 out of the 3. So I would actually have my most intelligent answer is it depends on their fiber type. I think, and their proclivity to grow for a variety of other reasons in those ranges. For example, if you're dealing with an individual who's predominantly fast twitch, or a muscle that's predominantly fast twitch, or more fast twitch than slow twitch, so to speak, then if you eliminate the 5 to 10 range, you're really fucking yourself pretty well. Like you might miss out on 15 to 20% of your potential hypertrophy there. And then, because, the faster twitch fibers do get involved in close to failure of the lighter loads, but probably not to the same extent. And then if you're sort of intermediate fiber, 50-50, so-and-so, if you at least hit that 10 to 20 range regularly, you're getting most of your gains. And then if you're a super fast twitch, but you never do the 20 to 30, you're missing out on very little, 5% or less of your potential hypertrophy, maybe even less than that. And that's potential like relative hypertrophy, right? So if you were going to gain 5 pounds of muscle this year, whatever 5% of that is, that's what you won't gain. So it's like some nominal value, 25 grams or some shit. So, or 250 grams. So in any case, not a ton, but a little bit. And I'll tell you what, I think that is a very pertinent question, mostly in the 5 to 10 range, because James, correct me if I'm wrong, but like That's the range. If you're going to avoid a range, that's the range that has a good reason to avoid, which is like you're too fucked up in that body part and too injured to go that heavy. There's no real good reason to avoid the higher range if you have time to train at all.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Absolutely. The other thing too, yeah, I don't think this is a huge deal, and I think what Mike was saying about the fiber typing is basically spot on. And I think the only way that you really fuck this up is if you are lopsided against your fiber typing more often than not.
Mhm.
That's like really the only time where it's like probably going to make a tangible difference, I think. You know,
Yep.
where you're like if you're slow twitch and you're always doing 5 to 10,
Yep.
then it's just wasting your time at that point.
Yeah. So like my wife is a super fast twitch, especially in her lower body. She like gets violently sore from sets of 6 to 8 in the squat, and then she does like sets of 20 or 30 in hack squats and just doesn't literally feel a thing. Like if I never let her train below 10 reps in the squat, she would be missing a lot. She really would. Or just another sort of broad example is someone's like, hey, like what really fucks up your hamstrings? You're like, man, sets of 5 to 10 on the compound like hip hinges really just fuck me up and make me grow like crazy. You're like, do you do that? You're like, no, fuck that. Okay. That's stupid.
Yeah,
You're not
exactly.
doing your best shit. So all right. Next one. He said, I'm sure you'll beat this to death in the new book, but can you give some insight here? I think I did that. If you're doing physique and combat sport concomitantly, do your physique MEVs change? Yes, they go up because you have to fight against a higher level of catabolism at the very least. And if it's muscles you use in the combat sport, your MEVs might not change, but the volume you get in addition to your regular MEVs is junk volume, which poisons the rest of your training. And it turns out you still need the same minimum effective volume to grow, but the net magnitude, or in our volume landmarks book, the width of the curve, the growth curve, is just lower. So, like, oh yeah, I get my arms worked boxing, like, yeah, worked, but not hypertrophied, like, right. So they're more tired, right. So your MEV is still about the same, but the amount of growth you get out of that MEV is less than the usual one. Right, exactly. And then the amount of growth you get at any other volume is also less. Yes.
Yeah, so I think people could even confuse like the idea of MEV across two different sports, right? In that case, where you're saying like, oh, I'm training my arms and my arms are getting a workout in my BJJ. So isn't that an MEV? It's like, well, maybe for BJJ purposes, but it's not an MEV for physique purposes. It's not causing you the most growth, right? So then they have kind of like a contextual thing. But yeah, ultimately the other sports will just be kind of in just taking up space in your MRV, which you could have been applying towards your physique stuff. So I think the MEV for growth basically stays the same. The MV might
it could definitely go up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or go up. Your MVs might be a wash at that point, where you're doing enough general just fitness stuff where you don't really have to worry about your maintenance volume. But yeah, that's about it.
Next one. Do you think there's ever a point of diminishing returns in strength for sport? Yes, there's diminishing returns in everything for everything. So we'll consider this a non-question, Daniel. I'm just kidding. We're fucking with you. But yes, there is. Or do you think it's only an issue if the athlete is training to improve their strength and size at the cost of training their sport practice? Well, there's diminishing returns anyway because strength starts to diminish fewer returns. Or do you think it's only an issue if the athlete is training to improve their strength and size at the cost of training their sport practice when their needs analysis has already deemed their current level of strength sufficient? I don't really know what sufficient means. Not so far behind your competition that it is your number one priority is probably a better way to put that. But training to get stronger, period, at some point must necessitate the removal of other kinds of training or the impact on it. So does strength ever have diminishing returns for sport in terms of if you had a magic pill that just made you stronger? Also, yes. For example, in tennis, at some point, how strong you are without a concomitant increase in peak velocity of your arm extension. Like at some point, you're so strong, your racket basically doesn't slow down when it hits the ball at all, right? Like let's say Thor hit a fucking racket. Well, Thor could hit a tennis ball really fucking far, but the Flash, sorry to mix universes, could probably hit it farther because it's such a low weight implement that the peak velocity might be more interesting at that point. And to some extent, strength no longer improves peak velocity if you just keep getting stronger, and it just makes you stronger. right? So there's definitely that thing. The thing is, that is a level of strength that's wildly outside of almost anything anyone could achieve. So if a tennis player was offered a pill that made them 10 times stronger, it wouldn't be near that diminishing returns. They could just hit the forehand ball at like 200 miles an hour and fuck someone's shit up with it and just be the greatest fucking tennis player of all time. So theoretically, that distinction exists, but what happens much more often, almost always, if not always, practically, is the amount of strength training it takes to get that strong is way outside of the volume landmark interference you're going to see in order to try to get that strong. So it's not that you can be way too strong for an MMA fighter. It's that what it would take for you to become stronger than really strong needs the removal of the interference with other MMA tricks. And let me see if we missed anything before James raised in. Simple case in point, if an MMA fighter or NFL running back can squat double body weight as a max, training to 2.25 times their body weight in the squat is probably not going to make them that much better at their sport. It actually sure is, and will take away a lot of sport training time if they endeavor to get there. Therefore, it's not worth it. Yes, the takeaway time from sport is a thing. The add fatigue to sport training is a thing. But if it was a magic pill, it would make them better. A fucking running back that can squat 3,000 times normal, just as an arbitrary figure in order to illustrate that strength never hurts, would fucking just get the ball and run through people. And if I had to fight a guy in MMA who could squat 10,000 pounds, I never would, because he would give me an ankle lock. I would try to take it. He would break my shoulder with his leg, and that would be the end of it. So it's never bad to be strong if it comes in a magic pill. But if it doesn't come in a magic pill and it comes from training, shit, James, there's been a lot of busts in the UFC lately. I better shut the fuck up about the magic pill thing. A couple people have been on that.
The magic EPO.
Yikes. So anyway, James, what do you think?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about this exact question in a variety of contexts quite a bit. So I like the question, Daniel, on this one. So what Mike was saying was really important to remember. So in virtually every circumstance, a stronger athlete tends to outperform the weaker athletes, right? That's just been almost universally true. So here we have an issue of kind of economy of training and use of time. So time and effort are kind of finite resources. We're trying to figure out what the best use of time and effort for our athlete are. There is a point where you might determine, right, statistically, that your athlete is in a good spot for strength, or what we would just call competitive, meaning if you looked at normative standards for your age group, your gender, your competition level, your athlete would be in the same level as their peers, right? So in that case, you could make a case and say, my athlete is competitive, at least for strength. I could feasibly allocate my time to other areas which may provide more potential for success, right? Another situation which you might find yourself in is where you actually have an athlete who is significantly stronger than their competition. And usually we say above average means like 2 or more standard deviations above the normative standards for the competition. So if your person is squatting 2 standard deviations more than the competition, they are above average, right? So beyond competitive. Now, that might be something that's what's driving their success. So you kind of have a hard thing to balance here, where you're saying they are way stronger than everyone else, but that might be contributing to why they're successful. So as a coach, when you're looking at your needs analysis, thinking about volume landmarks, you have to balance those things. So if you have an athlete who is competitive or above competitive in the areas of strength, what you have to now look at is, what are my limiting factors for success?
100%.
Once you determine what those are, right, then you can make a better judgment as to what direction to go. You might actually say, hey, like strength is still the best bang for my buck right now. It's that could be true. Or you might be like, this guy cannot catch a ball to save his life. He's got dick hands, right? And if he doesn't figure this shit out, he's not going to play in college, right? Then you can make a case and say, maybe we'll back down the strength training a little bit because he's competitive or above competitive, and there is a glaring other area that just needs some time. And that would be the way that you would want to go about thinking that. But to say that like they're above competitive or competitive in strength and just call it a day is not necessarily the right strategy for all the reasons that Mike already laid out there. Strength is a hard one to argue against, though, just like anything else, there is a point where that time could possibly be better spent somewhere else.
Brilliant. All right. Say an intermediate physique trainee has 2-pronged goal where they want to grow, but also want to improve a specific exercise, pause, squat, deadlift, bench, whatever, in the 6 to 10, 8 to 12 rep range. What do you think of the following strategy to do so? Of course, taking their body part, MRV and systemic MRV into account. First, meso introduce the move in an MEV volume and just increase intensity while progressing the IRR. Second meso, go from MEV midway through MAV, 5 to 10 pounds heavier than previous meso and progress RIR. Third meso, going from the exercise MEV to MRV, 5 to 10 pounds heavier than the previous meso and progressing RIR as usual. Fourth meso will likely be low volume or mini cut, so move will be taken down to MEV and intensity increased while progressing RIR. Fifth meso, complete break from the movement, then repeat mesos 1 through 4 until they're happy with where they're at in the movement. Is this a sound approach? Of course, this wouldn't be done forever, but if the intermediate athlete wants 20 to 30 pounds in a lift, could this strategy work? I have a quick, easy modification to this strategy. Every single one of these myocycles need to be between MEV to MRV, and you just modulate the rep ranges by intensities and just get stronger as you can, and make sure you do enough volume in that movement to prioritize it, and less volume in other moves so that there's room in a systemic MRV. That's it. So you don't need to go up halfway or some shit, or then all the way and all this crap. Just MEV to MRV, and then when you need to take a resensitization phase, you stay at MV for a little bit. What I wouldn't do is remove the movement entirely. I'd probably keep it around at MV or just very light loads to practice on technique. Maybe remove the movement entirely for a meso 1 every 5. I think it's a terrible idea. Maybe that's a fine idea. But there's arguments for and against that. But definitely just MEV to MRV every meso. It's the rep ranges that you seem to be concerned with. So just stay in those rep ranges and modulate intensity so that you stay in those rep ranges.
I'm glad you said that, because I was wondering if I was missing something. I was like, why not just train it all the way?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, good. We're on the same page.
Yeah. All right, last one. So I'm going to be doing gymnastics 2 times a week, finally, in addition to my physique training. And I have a question about sequencing my 2-a-day workouts in the week. I'm going to be training upper lower 3 times a week for each of a total of 6 lifts a week, 6 on and 1 off. What would be the best days to put the 2 gymnastics sessions in to ensure complete recovery and least interference to the physique training? So my first, so it depends on how important gymnastics is to you. What I would say is put your gymnastics. So you should have, if you have upper body 3 times a week, upper lower, okay. So you have 3 upper body days. Your hardest upper body day, do not put gymnastics on that. Take your 2 less hard upper body days. And if gymnastics is very important to you, put gymnastics before those days, like in the AM, those days in the PM. If gymnastics is not super important to you, put gymnastics in the PM. What that allows, and actually this is very relevant to me because gymnastics and jiu-jitsu are similar in how they affect the upper body and fuck it up. I do most of my jiu-jitsu on my upper body days, hilariously, so that my lower body days, which I have 3 per week, just like you, are completely off of me fucking with my upper body. Because that gives it, especially joint-wise, which gymnastics will fuck you in, time to really, really heal. It creates a really high level of pulsatility. What would be a real not so great idea is if you took your leg days and you squished those 2 gymnastics days after the leg days, and then you'd essentially have like 5 days where you were fucking your upper body up, fuck, and you just blow out a shoulder or your elbows start to hurt, so on and so on.
That was really good. Yeah. So I'm trying, I think a lot of it too, Daniel, depends on which like events you're doing and practicing in gymnastics. Like, for example, if you were doing the rings, like I would say like the last thing you want to do is the rings after like a pec day. That's going to blow your pecs off at some point. Or if you had just done some squats, like probably the last thing you want to be doing is a floor routine or like a fucking vault or something like that. Then you're just asking for trouble. So I would, Mike's suggestion is really good, especially on this idea of consolidation of stressors. I would say pick and choose your gymnastics, the days carefully so that you're not just putting yourself at unnecessary risk. And the ones that really come to mind for me are like the floor and the vault and the rings. I think the other ones are fairly negotiable, but those ones I would just be a little wary of.
Yeah, very good. Sam Elkhuizen.
Yeah, amazing.
Ooh.
Elk and Huizen.
That's sweet. All right. Hi, Doc. Thanks for answering my last questions. You bet. Couple more here. Let's see here. In football culture, there is this myth that having sex before a game will hinder your performance. Some players and trainers advocate against it, while others swear by it. My guess is that there is some truth to it, although there are glycogen depletion and release of certain chemicals. Is there any science and a reason to back this claim?
Glycogen depletion? Fucking marathon? What are we doing over there? Jesus.
In what sports could there be a bigger difference? So I think that, again, so let's get super technical here. what happens in all sexual encounters, especially for males, is when you blow your load, you tend to exhibit a slight inhibition of your proclivities towards sexuality and violence that last. You're James Hoffman, they last for several hours, and then you're back to your fucking psycho self, caveman self. If you're most normal people, a day or two later, you might be feeling froggy again. So if you notice that when you blow your load, that for hours and or a day after, you feel less froggy and fucking just amped, then you probably can benefit very tiny amount in performance from just not blowing your load for a couple days. And this is something you can try yourself. You don't need a whole lot of science to confirm this. Like if you don't fucking have sex, and this includes jacking off, by the way, if you don't blow your load for a couple of days, you feel a little bit fucking amped. Maybe you kind of want to move. And that's kind of good feeling to have, at least psychologically, in the back of your head for a football game. And probably physiologically to some really, really small extent as well. Now, this is modulated by the degree of sex having. So if, like James says, you're having marathon rock star sessions and not sleeping at all, yeah, sex before a game is a bad idea because you're expending a considerable amount of energy, especially if you're one of these guys that fucking bang. There's banging where the girl gets on top, and you have your dick out, she kind of rides it, and it's all fun and games, kissy faces, and then you go to sleep. But then there's like porn star shit where you're like trying to do all these weird, the toilet. James, you know what I'm talking about?
The toilet.
There's one of the guy like sits on the girl's basically in like De La Hiva, or she's inverted, and the guy like sits on top of her. It's one of these like Kama Sutra dick positions where your dick has to break off at some point.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's weird. I don't know how they get into that position.
Like you open up the Kama Sutra and you're like, this shit is not. Human beings can't do this. This is like a contortionist sex book.
Yeah.
So if you do shit like that, if you like fucking, and I mean like sorry to get graphic, but I suppose that's what RP Plus is for. If you fucking bang hard, like I've gotten glute cramps banging before. Like I've gotten fucking, like James, you get up out of bed and your legs are toast, and you're like, fuck, I need a fucking Gatorade.
Oh, yeah.
You feel me? Like, if you have 2 or 3 of these sessions with someone you're really passionate about the night before a game, physiologically, yeah, you probably won't achieve full recovery, especially in hip extension, right? And then it's not going to do you any good. So, a little passionate lovemaking and a blowing your load, if it doesn't affect you and your frogginess is not a thing, I think it's totally cool. But if you're fucking marathon fucking rock star style and especially missing sleep, you're fucking yourself over. And lastly, in what sports could be the bigger difference? In sports that require a lot of hip extension, strength, power, and fucking violent aggression, powerlifting, wrestling, weightlifting, football, shit like that. In what sports does it matter? Very little, if not at all. Gymnastics, and sports in which you're judged on diving, for example, especially technical diving, high diving. There you're judged on technical mastery, and actually blowing your load can, male or female, blowing your load can calm you the fuck down and make you less nervous and actually improve your performance probably by some small margin. James, you're the expert here on sex. What do you think?
I'm definitely not an expert. So yeah,
you're not a player. You just crush a lot. Huh?
Yeah, I hear the argument for the like kind of abstinence before competition. I don't buy into it a ton, but I hear it, right, and that's fine. One thing to also consider too is like, and I think this is very true. There's a great social support, like compassionate touch, relaxation effect of having, not like Mike was saying, rock star sex, but just having like a healthy having a healthy sex life with your partner is really, really good. For some people, it helps them like fall asleep. For other people, it helps them just be really, really relaxed. All of which are very, very positive things. So I think you can kind of weigh both of those together, and you say, does not having sex or an orgasm make me a little bit edgier? But does that come at the cost of like having a very positive lifestyle, which is also important to me and makes me feel good, and make the best decision there? Like I think for me personally, I would go more on the lifestyle side just because I haven't seen, or I don't buy into that quite as much. But that's just an individual choice, right? Where you might say like, no, like I really do feel the effect of being abstinent essentially, and I'm not missing out on anything on the lifestyle side, so it's good to go. Or it could be the other way around. So I would say weigh the two and see how you feel about it.
Yeah, that's very good. That really kind of answers number 2 when he says, this brings another question to mind. Would there be any effect on strength muscle gains with adult nap time pre and post lifting? Adult nap time. Could there be some hypothetical differences measurable between celibacy and an nymphomaniac identical twins? So I think post lifting, the number one thing you want to do is be able to get in your nutrition and just be relaxed. So maybe not just banging post lifting, but get some food in you and just start, like heavy petting. That's really good. Probably is really good for post lifting environment. But super banging, getting dehydrated, and not eating for a couple of hours, not great. Pre-lifting, again, it comes back to what James says. Like if you zap energy with your adult cull times, then it's not a good idea. If they are net recuperative for you and promote recovery and reduce a shitload of stress, then it's a net benefit. So it really depends on the kind of adult naps you're doing and how that sort of thing affects you personally. Again, it's not rocket science. If sex leaves you like, oh, fuck, then yeah, it's not great to do right pre and post lifting. But if sex leaves you like, oh, that was so sweet, I'm so relaxed, ooh, I could go train, then fucking perfect, bang it up.
Yeah, I think like if at least from the post perspective, pre is debatable depending on how fatigued it makes you. But from the post perspective, like if somebody could just give you that magic touch where they like gave you like the bibbity bobbity boop and they just made you fucking orgasm without you having to do anything. Like if somebody just gave you like, here's some ice cream and boom, orgasm, right? But that's like post workout miracle. And then you were also in space while this was happening.
Sure.
That would be amazing. It's just, like to get to that state, you usually got to put a little bit of effort into it.
Yeah.
So
that's why God invented the blowjob, both male and female blowjob. All right. After my bulking, I'm currently running a strength/lower volume block and will start cutting in a few weeks.
Cool.
Thinking about ramping up my incline and reducing my flat pressing volume. Excuse me. Old ratio of flat to incline was 2.5 to 1, I guess, in volume. This might not be the best approach.
Intensity, right? That would be insane.
I hope not. This might not be the best approach, but considering my training age, less than 1.5 years, and that I've been barely doing any incline work before the past couple of mesos, probably be able to make some decent progress this cut. What would be a good approach to this? Thanks and have a nice day. Yeah, I think you can make progress during the cut at your training age. So I would do a 1-to-1. Since you're 2.5 to 1 flat to incline, I would just switch to 1-to-1 for this cut, and you'll get some cool upper chest gains while you're cutting.
Yeah, and also like just kind of I would beg the question of why. Like, why does the incline matter to you? Do you just want to have a stronger incline bench, or is your upper pecs kind of lacking? Like, if your upper pecs aren't lacking too much, I would kind of be like, why are you going through the rigmarole? Like, things seem to be going well. But if that is the case, then yeah, that makes perfect sense.
All right, from galaxies, from universes, his name, feared, respected, adored. Ansuman Radhakrishnan comes back and says, hey, docs, hope you're both doing well. I think we're doing okay.
Thank you, sir.
Following up on my mass versus maintenance after cut question from last week, I revisited the discussion in the mini cut manual. It seems pretty clear that massing after a super deep cut, like the bodybuilding prep, is a good idea, the reason for which you guys outlined very well in the book. My question was more specifically about a less aggressive fat loss phase that would cap the end of a macro cycle focused on muscle gain, probably from approximately 15% to 10%-ish, and would lead to another muscle gain focused macro cycle. Kind of a selfishly motivated question, since pretty much all of macro cycles are going to look like that for a good few years. In the mini cut manual, this exact instance, the recommendation was to have a maintenance period to clean the slate for future muscle gain, which is a very good argument. To me, it seems that even if the cut to 10% is not super aggressive, it is still physiologically very fulfilling to go into a surplus, do some high volume training immediately post-cut, before taking a maintenance period and resuming massing from there. You wouldn't run into adaptive resistance issues if you left metabolite training out of your training while cutting, which seems reasonable if you cut as 8 to 10 weeks. True. If you could still logically add volume and progress from the cut mesocycles into a mass meso, I think the best argument I could make for maintenance over surplus right after the completion of a cut would be that the mass would be basically a mini mass and thus would be inherently less effective. Yep. It would not only be a mini mass, but it would be a mass that you do at the very end of a pretty fatiguing, not super fatiguing, but pretty fatiguing cut. So you'd be a little bit more adaptive resistant. Then a protracted mass phase and the maintenance phase would allow. The best argument for massing right after would be if you psychologically found it much easier to mass post-cut and get pumps again with some metabolite training. Does that analysis seem reasonable? I think it's fucking spot on. So it's basically optimality versus psychology. Remember, since we're human, psychology gets into optimality a little bit. So if you really just want to fucking blow it out and it'll do a little mini mass post-cutting, I think it's fucking sweet and you're going to make great long-term gains. If you can stomach going into maintenance phase right after for a little bit, then I think you're choosing the approach that's going to lead to most long-term muscle, but just by a small fraction.
Yeah, that was really good.
If you find that a particular muscle group seems to respond very well to the 5 to 10 rep range, but it seems unsafe to do a lot of training in that rep range, what a great question. What would be the best course of action? For example, my biceps love barbell curls in sets of 8 to 10, but I don't feel super comfortable doing a lot of bicep training any lower than 8 reps. And the cable and dumbbell curls don't seem well suited to that rep range. Should I just expect my biceps to get a lot of growth from pulling work and try to stay in the 8 to 20 range for most of my training? So my easiest solution to this is, why don't you just keep your biceps in the 8 to 10 rep range? Like, if they like that range, it doesn't have to be a big range. You could do literally sets of 8 or 9 or 10 or anything between those for that entire fucking, like, for years. It's still in that range. There's nothing about the ranges that say you have to fucking navigate the whole fucking range. You got to be in a part of it. The sets of 8, if they're safe, because you said sets of 8 to 10 are fine. Lower than 8 reps is not fine. So 8 reps, 9 reps, and 10 reps are all valid. And by the way, those are first set reps, to be clear. So if you do 8 on a first set, okay, then if you do 5, 6, 4, or whatever on later sets, that's not too heavy, because it's still your 8 RM or less. So it's still not going to be injurious. So I think if you start a set with 8 reps, your best first set is 8 reps. I think that you end up getting a spectrum of 8 to 4 reps, and that's damn near about as heavy as we would ever want you to go. Yeah, you could go as low as 5, but you're still in that range. You're good. So I think that's about as simple as that is. James, am I missing anything here?
No, I think that's good. I think this is also where you can use like the modified rep ranges. So, if you don't feel like less than 8 is safe or, efficacious for you, you don't have to necessarily block it like, okay, well, this is 5 to 10 and this is 10 to 20. You can kind of use those little sub ranges. So you might say, okay, for biceps, I'm going 8 to 12, right? And in that case,
as close to 8 as you can.
Yep. As close to 8 as you can, right? So you might get like 10, 10, 9, 8 or something like that, or maybe like 10, 9, 8, 7, something like that. Anything like, so you can get a little creative. Don't think of it as kind of like you're locked into 5 to 10, right? And then you're saying, well, I only want to be in this part of that range, 8 to 10. You can expand it out a little bit. You can spill over, and I wouldn't think too much about it. Yeah, exactly. But I'm with you though. I generally don't recommend going less than 5 or 6 on barbell bicep curls at that point. It's kind of like, all right, and unless you're like, doing drop sets or something crazy, but like for just meat and potato stuff, it's getting kind of heavy for that movement.
Yeah. And another idea that you can introduce is to do somewhat more compound bicep training. Do assisted underhand close grip pull-ups. Stuff like that can get your biceps pretty fucking well torched. So give that
absolutely.
All right. For the 20 to 30 rep range, does all metabolite training automatically count as sets in the 20-30 rep range? That's a good question. For example, if I do calf raises with 10 seconds of rest, but my reps are in the 10 to 20 range, am I really training them in 20-30 range? No, you're not. What matters is what your first set looks like. That determines the range, because remember, the rep ranges are just they're just really shitty proxies for the intensity ranges, which is really what we're trying to target. So like if you do 15 reps on a first set, it doesn't matter how long or short your rest periods are. That's your 17 RM weight. That's in the 10 to 20 rep range. So it's your first set that matters. So if you do 10 seconds of rest, your reps are in the 10 to 20 range, then, well, it depends on what your first set is. If your first set is 22 range or 22 reps, then it's in the 20 to 30. If your first set is 18, then it's in the 10 to 20.
Yeah.
He says, I feel kind of stupid for asking this. I believe you guys have said that with shortened rest periods, even if you fall out of the 20-30 rep range, you're still, in effect, training that range.
Is he asking just about like a metabolite effect? I think that's maybe what he's asking.
Do you get a metabolite effect? Yes, you do. But you can get a metabolite effect out of the 10 to 20 range. You can, right? So the metabolite and the 20 to 30 rep range are not synonymous. They just intersect a lot. So it's difficult to do 20, 30 reps without a metabolite effect. But it is possible to get a metabolite effect out of the 10 to 20 range, or with sufficiently long rest breaks, do the 10 to 20 range and not get a metabolite effect. So in essence, both they intersect, and there's no sort of like conditional adherence there. It could be one, or it could be the other, it could be both, it could be neither. But if you are in the 10 to 20 range, that means your first set, when you're trying pretty hard, just a few reps from failure, has to land in that 10 to 20 range. Or you discount the RIR.
Yes.
Lastly, he says, would any isolation to compound superset count as training in that range? Would the reps have to add up to 20, 30 reps? Again, it matters what your first set is on a superset to give you that range. So, for example, let's say your overhead extension, you do a set of 10, 2 away from failure. That needs a 12 RM. and then you do a set of 10 push-ups. The 10 push-ups, that's probably your 30 RM or something fresh. So that definitely counts as in the 20 to 30 range. So the second set I wouldn't worry about, but your first set, if your first set is 8, that's an 8 RM weight for you. That's in the, or your first set of 8 and it's, you go to failure, that's in the 5 to 10 range, right? So it's your first set that counts, that determines it. So yes, again, it's the same thing. Isolation and compound supersets count as metabolite work, but they do not count in the 20 to 30 rep range. Half of them, in the case of supersets, count in the 10 to 20, if that's where they fall. And then the latter exercise, unless you really fuck it up, I know sometimes, James, people are like, I did 10 extensions and then I did 3 push-ups. And I'm like, sweet, you did push-ups in your 5 to 10 range.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not really a superset. You're just trying really hard at something you suck at. So make sure that, so what I would say is most supersets are best done where the first set is in the 10 to 20 range and the second set is also in the 10 to 20 range, which means that the first set counts towards the 10 to 20 range and the second counts towards the 20-30 because it's of that intensity. That would be 20 to 30 fresh.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but I would also say, like, don't get too caught up in the minutia here. This is like we're like really splitting hairs on some stuff. So it's an interesting question, though. I like it. I'm just saying, like, if you're really perseverating on this stuff, you might just want to move on.
Yeah, for sure. No, great question. And Ansuman, this is something that's going to become relevant to you later in your UFC career, but for now, it's good that you're looking into this and it's good to be accurate, but it's certainly not going to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Related to that, I pretty much always train my calves with the Dr. Mike approach of 30 seconds rest between sets. Mind you, the reason I do that is because calves, like forearms and like many other muscles, exhibit very, very small amounts of central fatigue, and their peripheral fatigue recovers really, really quickly. Like, you don't do squats with 30 seconds in between and expect to do any more than 1 rep after like 3 sets. But you could do calves with sets of 30 seconds in between, get like 20 in a first set, and then do 10, 10, 10, 9, 8, and you just don't need to rest that much. So why the fuck would you rest that much, right? That's really the key.
And you run into the problem too, like if you do rest, then you're back up to like 20, 30 reps again. You're like, son of a bitch.
Exactly. So you might as well just train heavier. And then why the fuck are you training calves heavy and resting a lot? What are you doing, calf powerlifting or some shit like that? Like, and it's been shown that, this basically we're doing sort of like almost Maya reps for calves, where you get them nice and pre-fatigued and then you keep hammering those faster twitch fibers by never letting them rest a ton, and it works super well. It says, never been a problem for me, but recently I've experimented with higher rep ranges. I run into severe difficulty staying in the rep range where 30 seconds of rest seems too short, and I drop from 20 reps to like 13 immediately. That's all of my sets. That is not an issue. Remember, the rep ranges are proxies for intensity ranges, and they are only to be measured on your first set relatively fresh, period. So if your first set is 25, all the rest of the sets are in that range. They're in the 20 to 30 rep range. It's just the short rests take you out of that range. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Even waiting a bit longer still results in my calves crapping out. I've implemented downsets to avoid falling out of the 10 to 20 range. Don't do that, Ansuman. Stop doing that. Just do straight sets and let your reps fall. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
But the pump just gets super painful, and even with like a 50% reduction in load, well, that's really good, by the way. You shut the fuck up. That's why we train. You done found the golden goose, and now you're trying to run from his bitch ass. Come on, Ansuman. You want a painful pump. 50% reduction in load and still only like 10 reps instead of going back to the top end of the range. Taking this as a sign that 10 to 20 and possibly even higher rep range is a super productive range for me. That I definitely would say if you're painful pumps. So if I reduce loading on calves, instead of just pounding away at the smaller and smaller reps from fatigue, my calves don't get much of a pump. They just kind of fizzle out, and then they're kind of just like tired, right? So because I have faster twitch calves, but I guess yours are a bit slower twitch. So I think that, you probably are good to make those drops. So the 10 to 20 rep range is super productive range for me, but I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I would only even entertain the the down sets unless if you drop down to like 5 reps or something like that, then it's like, okay.
Yeah, there's just a not productive amount of volume per set that you're dealing with.
Yeah. But like, like 20 to 13 to like 10. Yeah, that's normal. That's fine. No worries. Will
Adams says, hey, Doc, since the beginning, look at me reading this like a fucking Viking novel. Since beginning weight training years ago, I've always had a difficult time growing my arms. Recently, I've been alternating the full body and arm shoulder emphasis MPT, physique template meso by meso. I definitely feel that I can get in a lot more arm volume when following specialization templates, but I don't like putting the compound lifts on the back burner for too long. How do you guys feel about alternating like that? Will I be better off stringing mesos together and then alternating? Thanks, Will. I think stringing mesos together is probably a better idea.
Yeah.
So what you can do is do like 2 to 3 mesos of arms and then 2 to 3 mesos of chest and back. Listen, you say I don't like putting the compound lifts on the back burner for too long. You got to sort of psychologically square that with your desire for big arms and shoulders, because that is a trade-off. So I would say if you like to do the compound lifts a lot, then either just never train your arms that much that you can still do them all the time, or at least what I would not do is do arm meso, compound meso, arm meso, compound meso. That's probably not enough specificity, not enough momentum generation. I would do 2 to 3 arm mesos and then 1 or 2 compound mesos and then go back and forth.
Yeah, I totally agree. What you also want to consider too is like, why, are you doing the compounds? Is it like an ego thing? Like you don't want your numbers to go down? Like, why is it that it's bothering you? Like the point of the arms delts meso is to get bigger fucking arms and to look jacked, right? And in the long term, that's going to potentiate greater gains in strength on the compounds anyway. So it's just one of those things, like, just kind of ask yourself, why are you being hesitant about that? You know that they're still going to be in there. It's not going to be the big priority emphasis, but you're still going to get your maintenance volumes covered and you're going to get bigger fucking arms, which is sweet. So just kind of think about why it's bothering you, and you're eventually going to have to make peace with it, but understand that, those arm mesos are actually going to make those better in the long term, which is a good problem. Like you got bigger triceps, your bench is going to go up,
Yep, exactly. All right. Jorge Requena. Hey guys, Mike, you almost got my name right last time, although it's actually Jorge Galeano Requena. Holy shit. But for some reason, it's not showing that way. Probably my fault when I subscribed on our RP website. Anyway, I'm from Spain, Barcelona. Have you guys ever been there? No. James, have you ever been to Spain?
I have not, but I think Dr. Fiance is heading over there in the near future.
Sweet. I heard it's lovely. A little introduction of myself first. I'm 36 years old and I've been lifting for the past 2.5 years. On my first year, I did the Fierce 5 routine, 4 days upper and lower version. They got from bodybuilding.com forums.
Nice.
I got pretty strong and added some muscle, but also lots of fat. My leg training was bullshit at the time. I started having knee issues, and I'll basically just sumo deadlift and do leg curls. By the end of the year, I also started having some shoulder issues, weak upper back, perhaps scapular traction, etc. Started my second year of weight training by prioritizing lower body lift, slowly added walking lunges and squats. Knees got overall stronger, although I would still have some minor knee pain here and there. I was still dealing with shoulder discomfort, so I didn't properly bench for almost half a year. I still find ways to train around that. Midway of that year, I discovered Dr. Mike Israetel Volume Landmarks on YouTube and did an overhaul of all my training. First mistake.
Nice.
Past October, I began my third year of training. I discovered the male physique template and decided to give it a try. I also hired a sports dietitian to take care of my nutrition. I can bench press now with no issues, while I'm still scared to go overhead, get injured, and potentially ruin weeks of proper training. So I've been doing front raises and landmine presses instead.
Get those landmine presses out of here.
Fucking landmine press. Knees feel bulletproof, controlled, slowish eccentrics have been key, and I'm squatting deeper than ever. That's
nice.
Great. So far, I've gained 4.5 kilos since November with some fat but still visible abs. Wow, this is great. Never been this heavy and lean, so I guess I'm doing good, although I'm still pretty fucking small. I think we all think that.
That's how we all feel, yeah.
You couldn't tell I lift if you saw me, but when I get a pump because I'm genetically pretty vascular, other gym bros think that I'm heavier. So that's really what's important, right? What other gym bros think. Okay, so now some questions I'd love you to answer to fine-tune my next macro cycle. Number 1, I've been doing squats after leg presses during my first macro cycle. I know you believe the opposite is more disruptive, but for tracking purposes, I know how much I'm supposed to squat after leg pressing. Do I keep it the same or change it? I've seen pretty good quad gains in the past 6 months. More size, bigger veins, more muscle separation, etc. Well, first of all, you can just track differently and start tracking it the new way.
Exactly.
Or you can keep going with leg presses first and squats second. It's a really, really moot point. James?
Yeah, I would say you can definitely keep it going, especially if it's been working well for you, which it sounds like it has. At some point, I think just for the sake of doing some variation, it might be good to flip-flop it, and then you can just start tracking it differently on a brand new macro cycle. You say, okay, from this point on, I'm going to start doing my volume landmarks, or I'm going to revisit my volume landmarks a little bit since I'm doing a major exercise order swap. But other than that, yeah, totally fine.
Yep. Number 2, rep ranges and exercise selection. This is what I have in mind. Monday, upper body chest focus, chest incline press, 5 to 10, cable flies, 10 to 20, flat press 5 to 10. Interesting.
I would say take that flat press out and just do more incline press.
Yep. Yep, and the 5 to 10 at the end is a bit heavy. Back, landmine T-bar row, undecided doing 5 to 10 or 10 to 20. Rear delts 10 to 20.
Get that T-bar. Get that landmine out of here. What did I tell you before?
Tuesday, lower body quad focus. Leg press 10 to 20, squats 5 to 10. Seat, I would flip those. Seated leg curls 10 to 20, calves 10 to 20. Thursday, upper body back focus, back bent over rows 5 to 10, one arms 10 to 20, assisted pull-ups 10 to 20. That's really good. Chest press machine 10 to 20. Side delts 10 to 20. Friday, lower body posterior focus. Sumo deadlifts 5 to 10. Walking lunges 5 to 10. RDL 5 to 10. Sumo deadlift and RDL same day is too much. No, but what I would do is put RDLs right after sumos when your lower back is warmed up, and do walking lunges after, because they really fuck you up.
Yep.
Switch RDLs and seated leg curls. Not important. You could do one or the other. And just remove sumo deadlifts. Any for more quality RDL reps, that's your call. I don't have a problem with either one, James.
I'm not a huge fan of the sumo deadlift unless you're really trying to work on those glutes.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
I would say I would just do quality RDL at that point, but that's your call. It's not right or wrong. That's just my personal preference.
Yeah. And then, do you think it's better to do the posterior focus workout on Tuesday, since that will be fresher for deadlifts, and do leg press / squat on Friday?
Tell you what, I would split up some of that back work on the Thursday. Right, you got bent rows, one arm rows, which you could probably consolidate or put on a different day, and then you got assisted pull-ups. That's a lot.
That's a lot. I would say 2 exercises per body part.
And then just move one of them, right? Move one of the one arm rows or something to a different day. Monday, yeah.
Yep. And then Saturday, upper body MISC. That's right, for the bodybuilding forms. Bi tries, front delts, traps 10 to 20. Back, cable and machine rows, chest, decline, or floor pressing 10 to 20. I choose to put these less stress on the shoulder because Monday is heavy pressing, thinking of switching this to free weight exercise with chest press machine. Sorry for the long post. No, Jesus Christ, don't apologize. I think it looks good. So what we all critique so far, I think, applies. And also, I think if you want to be maximally jacked, you have to train your arms more often. So I would add some arm stuff on every other upper body day. So Monday should have some arms, and Thursday should have some arms too. And Friday can have, or Saturday can have the most arms, but still arms.
Yeah, I don't know, Mike. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think floor pressing is kind of lame, and I think decline pressing is.
He's using it for joint management, so I think
if
that's the only thing to do. Yeah, and he says thinking of switching this free weight exercise with chest press machine. Yeah, if it gives you a fuller range of motion, I think that's probably preferred.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, Nick Bradford says, "Hi, Docs. My apologies for particularly bland white guy name.
Yeah,
hopefully
what the fuck, Nick?
Hopefully you can make some lemonade." Nick Bradford. He's like the guy you push too far. That's like Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just a regular man, but then
he's like the guy starring in the next Die Hard remake movie. Nick Bradford was
my family.
Yeah,
that's one of Alex Pevsner's favorite quotes. "Get off my plane" from Air Force One.
I love hearing you guys criticize Alex's movie choices.
I mean, they're awful. I take that back. Some of them are awful, and some of them he's really artistic about, and they're really good movies, but they're so good that you and I hate them because we hate good movies.
Also, Alex is the guy who will order like 5 California rolls when we go out for sushi, and then at the end, we're like, who the fuck ordered all these California rolls? And he's like, oh, I just wanted to eat one. I'm like, God damn it.
There you have it. Number 1, given my current work schedule, I'm pretty much stuck with a 3+1 meso setup. I've tried going MEV to MRV in 3 weeks, but the jumps are too much, and I just shit the bed, so I'm going to try breaking it up into 2 mesos. Thinking about this made me wonder how much of an effect on macrocycle length does the number of times hitting MRV have? Is macrocycle length defined as the time we need before a low volume meso more affected by the number of weeks accumulating volume, or increased fatigue generated by the number of times hitting MRV? It's a combination of those, really. A macrocycle is an accumulation phase. An accumulation phase is when you've hit your systemic MRV. You can hit local MRVs a couple times, though, within that. That's just fine. Look, if you need to break it up, break it up. Like, it's one of those things where if you're limited, then do what you need to do. So maybe what you could do is the 3+1. The 1 could be like sort of an MEV instead of MV. Like not so much a real deload the first time. Still train relatively heavy, but with lower volumes, so you can keep your strength momentum, and then start ramping the volumes again. Maybe give that a shot. Unless you need a real full deload of it.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a good suggestion. And one other thing, and I don't know if you're doing this, Nick, but what I've noticed is a lot of people who can't get out of the 3 and 1 setup often really push the intensity too hard. It's one very common mistake, and I know maybe you think you're doing a good job, but I would just maybe go and take a look at that again, because I find that what most people end up doing is they start at like 1 to 2 from fail and just grind, or they push too hard on the weight increases week to week, and by week 3 they're fucked. So maybe take a look at your intensities, both absolute and relative, maybe back down on the progressions.
So RIR. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another thing to look at.
Yeah, that is really, really, really good point. I used to struggle with that a lot. And then when I backed off on the initial intensities,
it makes a huge difference. Oh my God.
Huge difference. Yeah. All right. Number 2, as far as breaking MEV to MRV into 2 mesos, it would seem it's probably better to get the increased gains from going to MRV every other meso versus getting the easy gains of starting all the way back up to MEV, but only getting up to 66% of MRV every meso and repeating. Maybe. I would think the difference would be on a smaller side and probably be more determined by things like how well one handles the recovery nutrition and how much time dedication is available. It's also likely that I'm completely off base with my commenting. So we're going to introduce you to something, Nick, here. It's something that's going to be coming out with our book in about a year. The real important number to keep in mind is the MEV to start at. The way you progress isn't to your MRV. You're not trying to get to your MRV. You are trying to, in an auto-regulated fashion, adjust volumes to continue to have them be stimulative, which means if something is giving you good pumps, it is making you reasonably but not excessively sore, then you continue to add sets until and unless you cannot perform anymore or the soreness gets crazy and you cannot perform anymore. So if basically you start at a certain volume in your first week, it's a good workout, but you know that the next week it will no longer be a good workout because you will have adapted, increase volume enough so that it's still a good workout. In your third week, increase volume enough so it's still a good workout. So let's say you have to take the 4th week as a deload, take it. Then in the 5th week or your first week of your second meso, maybe repeat sort of your 2nd week's volumes and then your 3rd week's volumes and then do like a 4th week's of super higher volumes as needed to continue getting good workouts. So you don't need to have your MRV in mind and try to like shoot for it. Fuck that. As a matter of fact, you might be shooting for just essentially way too much damage for no fucking reason. You can't rush into your MRV. MRV has to be something that happens with slow graded auto-regulated increases in training volume. For example, if you are not sore and you're recovering super well and you're at 22 sets per week of back and you thought your MRV was 20, do you stop? No, you keep fucking going. But if you're no longer performing and so on and so forth, then you've hit your MRV. It's about the slow and steady rise from MEV. Your MRV is auto-discoverable every meso. It's not a goal. It can be, first of all, it can be different. And second of all, this isn't where we want to go. You don't want to go to your MRV. You just trend up in volume until you hit it. And if we have not been clear about that, we've definitely been clear about that in the Volume Landmarks book. We certainly not in all my video communications and less formal Facebook postings have I been clear about that, because the shorthand is train from your MEV to your MRV. But the reality of training is you start at your MEV and you accumulate as needed to continue to have training be stimulative. Essentially every single week is at MAV, okay, maximum adaptive volume, and you continue to move up until your maximum adaptive volume busts into your MRV and you can't keep going. That is how you do training. So don't worry about what your MRV is. Start at MEV, go up, go up, go up, take a deload, and then go up, go up, go up. You don't have to go all the way back down. Just go back down as much as you would think would still cause you to have a good workout in that first week back. James?
God damn, you I was going to say the same thing, but you answered it so much better than I was going to do it. So fuck. I was going to say, yeah, you don't have to necessarily go to your MRV, right? You don't have to push that boundary all the time. And one thing to consider, Mike mentioned the MAV right there at the end, right? We kind of look at the MAV as the golden zone in terms of the fatigue fitness paradigm, right? How much gains you're getting relative to how much effort you're putting in. But you could also add kind of like an economical component to it where you say, relative to like the other constraints in my life for my training program, this is the best bang for my buck. So sometimes chasing maximal is actually not an optimal strategy by a long shot because of the amount of time and effort and fatigue that goes into it. Whereas just chasing an MAV in terms of what's the best bang for my buck, am I still making pretty good gains relative to how much time and fatigue that's generating? I think that's a really good strategy. And it sounds like maybe because of your work schedule, you got some crazy stuff going on. Hit your MEVs and then just chase that MAV. Just say like, what's the best bang for my buck? Am I still progressing? Is it still fitting into my schedule? Can I keep training without having to do excessive fatigue management? Boom. That's what you're looking for. There's no point in chasing all that MRV if it's going to cut you short every time.
Yeah. All right. Concerning the 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30 rep ranges, what are the trade-offs of emphasizing rep ranges versus muscle groups movements on a given day? In other words, is it better to emphasize a rep range and have a greater variety of muscle groups on a particular day, or to have a greater emphasis of muscle groups and have a greater variety of rep ranges?
I think those are two separate issues.
I don't even know what the question is.
So yeah, I mean, at face value, I think we're just confusing like which muscle groups that we train on a given day and which rep ranges we train on a given day.
It can be any combination of what you need to do.
Yeah. So I think those are two just completely diverging issues, right? So the number of muscles you train on a given day will be dependent on the interrelation of all those muscles and their frequency kind of turnover, right? How your biceps might be 4 or 5 times per week, but your quads might only be 2. And the rep ranges will kind of be the interrelation of those sessions that you have within the same muscle groups, where some might be heavier, some might be lighter. So, hey, let us know. Maybe you can rephrase it. Maybe we missed something there, but I think those are two different questions.
Point B of that question is, how much benefit is there in targeting smaller rep ranges within the main 3? None. Would it be mostly just useful if you knew that your quads were more fast twitch and you might target the lower end? Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But in general, it's more of a checkbox. Just throw in enough weight on there and you're in the range and the target RP, and you're good to go 100%. So you can bias those ranges. Your faster twitch, your slower twitch. Here's another thing. You might not bias the ranges at all. You just might do, if you're faster twitch, more in the 5 to 10 range and less in the 10 to 20 range as far as sets. But if you want to bias within the ranges, you can. At some point, you're chasing a really, really sort of, it's because very difficult to argue that does anything at all.
Yes. All good.
On an unrelated side note, I was rewatching some of the older Dr. James solo webinars. They get infinitely more entertaining when I was watching 1.5 times 2 weeks behind on his haircut.
That's all times.
Watching a speed baller rant about his enemies list. Sweet.
I don't even remember that, but
thanks, guys. Look forward to these every week.
Awesome.
Look forward to having you. All right. Felipe Machado says, "What's up, docs? How many grams or percentage of total daily protein should I vector to my intra-workout meal, considering I'm using it exclusively to be properly nourished on the days that I have to start training 3 to 4 hours after my last meal, and the gap between that meal and the next one is quite long. Not looking for magical refined details on the intra-workout shakes." I would say 10% of your daily protein, some small amount.
Yeah,
so 20 grams or something.
And that could be personal preference too. Like you might actually just not use any and just really load the pre and post meals, even if there's a big gap in between. Like if you just like having those bigger meals, that's fine. If you want to feel more satiated, you could load it up a little bit more, but there's probably no benefit, really. So I think that's just a personal preference kind of thing.
And he says, "Thanks and you're welcome." And you're welcome for, I've just spared you the long, unnecessarily overthought question that I had because I just got lost in it and decided to the short one above instead.
He had a really complicated question and he confused himself and was like, fuck it. I got to post something. All right.
I won't even understand the answer. All right. Jack Natovich, the Natty King.
Son of the natural.
That's right. That's exactly what that means. Hey, docs. Hope you're doing well. I have 2 questions this week. Number 1, this may be a very beginner question. Why do you say that? We don't give a shit. But does a mesocycle refer to one period of training within a specific goal, or one accumulation to deload period? One accumulation to deload period.
Yeah,
a specific training period of a specific goal is a training block. So if one were to do 10 weeks of training for hypertrophy, consisting of 2 4-to-1 accumulation to deload periods, would they be doing one 10-week hypertrophy mesocycle? Nope. Training block with 2 5-week hypertrophy mesocycles. Yes. So block is the first one.
Yeah, so the quick breakdown, is microcycle, which is basically anywhere between one session to like one stretch of sessions that repeat. Mesocycle is a collection of microcycles, and a macrocycle is a collection of mesocycles, right? So you have kind of days to weeks microcycle, usually months scale is mesocycle, and then multiple months to a year is macrocycle.
Yep, and then the training block is something we defined in Scientific Principles. It's something that occurs between mesocycles and macrocycles in scale. So for example, like a macrocycle is a mass maintenance cut together. But each mass and each maintenance and each cut have multiple mesocycles. So what do you call a mass? What do you call a maintenance and a cut? It's a block of training.
Yeah. By the way, Bompo used to like scold me for using that terminology. He hated it for whatever reason.
Sure. The thing is, like, I know Bompo's critique, and unfortunately, I disagree with him. It's one of those things where they're like, okay, so what's an accumulation to deload period? Like mesocycle. What's two of those? A mesocycle. Like, that's not possible.
Yeah, it can't be the same.
Two different things. Anyway, I know, like it breaks from the Latin micro, meso, macro, but it's just a useful thing.
Yeah, it's just funny.
So, all right. Remember Doc used to call a mesocycle, what was it? Concentrated microcycles or something.
Yeah, he had a weird. That's the thing. Like when you comb through the periodization literature, dude, there's so much weird nonsense nomenclature. That's why I think we do a good job of just streamlining a lot of that stuff, because people will be like,
try.
"What do you do for the actualization phase?" I'm like,
yeah, like realization and shit. Like, well, motherfucker, the only realization you should have in training is that it sucks.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2, is there ever a situation where week-to-week changes in exercise selection and/or loading is justified or intelligent? In loading, definitely. In exercise selection, maybe.
Injury.
If so, what would it look like, and how would a large of a change of the week-to-week variation be? Yeah, you get hurt or something really just feels off. Or, for example, like I'm finishing my cut next week, and because I'm doing some sort of interesting water manipulations that week, I'm staying away from really overloading movements because I'm pretty fucking lean now. I'm very fucking strong, and I'm going to have weird body water, so I'm not going to do a whole lot of 5 to 10 range stuff, and I'm just going to do drop sets. But that's a once in a macro cycle sort of thing. Has to be a reason for it.
Sorry, yeah, there's very few times where you're going to do like an exercise undulation like that. Those should be pretty lockstep most of the mesocycle, unless you're working around injuries or you show up and the gym you're training at today doesn't have a hack squat machine. Like those are the only kind of situations where you do that.
Yep. It's funny. I fucking just wrote a huge part in the book on the variation chapter. By the way, I can't wait for you and Jared to tear that shit up.
Mm-hmm.
I should be done with the main chapter book writing in 3 or 4 weeks, by the way, at the clip I'm going. So it's pretty sweet.
Cool.
But I just covered exactly that. Like, when do you delete and replace exercises, and why would you conserve exercises meso or micro to micro to micro? What are the advantages and disadvantages of too much variation, so on and so forth.
Excellent. Can't wait to see it.
Just real quick, one of the ones that comes up is like, if you alter exercises every microcycle, like you do new ones, like when you start on a new hack squat machine or even an old one you haven't used in a while, like it feels awkward and weird, and your mind muscle connection sucks, and your technique's not that great, and your loading's not that great because you're just still getting used to it. If you alter your exercises every microcycle, you literally just permanently make everything awkward and off and weird forever.
Yes, and it's an immediate violation on like your volume landmarks, right? Because you're inserting.
For sure, because you have no idea, right? Yeah, you have no idea what your volume landmarks are at that point.
Yeah,
like,
so your MEV goes down. So if you're starting more than what you did last week with a new exercise, you're already in violation of some stuff. It's like a mess,
or it's way too much. Like a new exercise, you did 3 sets of that, you did 3 sets of this, and now it's way too much, and it's like, fuck that. It's
just a mess.
I suppose another thing with injury for exercise variation, real quick, just to put this in there, when you would vary is like travel. Like travel, you might not have access to your normal equipment,
right?
Or you might not have the body water compartmentalization or fatigue tolerance to do super crazy compounds. So you just do like machine burnouts and stuff. That's totally cool. Safety first.
Yeah. But again, like you get the idea. These are all like extraordinary kind of circumstances, not just meat and potatoes kind of stuff.
Yeah. P.S. Dr. Mike, I noticed you've been eating a lot of that low-calorie bread recently. What do you intend to do during the week of Pesach, which is the Jewish Passover, by the way, as opposed to the original Passover, as opposed to Easter? Do they make low-calorie matzahs? Being a Russian Jew myself, welcome to the club. I suppose it's not my role to welcome you to my kingdom. God damn it. I guess it is. I can't imagine the hell I would get from my mother and aunt if they saw me breaking Pesach. Well, I'm a secular humanist, so I'll let you fill in the blanks of what that means. God and I don't exactly get along, so I break Passover every fucking chance I get. And my mom doesn't so much give a shit as long as I'm a good person. Which by Jewish standards, who knows what that means, huh? Am I right? World Bank conspiracy? Anyone? So, yeah, I don't know. Low-calorie matzahs, man, I feel like matzahs are already fucking low calories. Matzah's terrible. It'd be a perfect FPRH food. James, are you familiar with matzah?
This is a wafer cracker thing, right?
Yeah, it's awful. It's fucking terrible. It's the worst food ever. It tastes like shit. You can eat matzo all the time on a cut and be like, fuck this. I don't even want to eat food. That's great. I should just start eating it now.
Pass on Passover, new hashtag.
Seriously. Yeah, awful. All right. Tony Drotnell says, hey guys, follow up to my delt training questions from a few weeks ago. Pausing and slowing centrics have been working great to really hit my delts, but I've also massively increased the load on my biceps from holding up the dumbbells.
Oh, man.
This has always been a major problem with lateral raises, but is there a way around it? I've tried anywhere from straight arms to quite a bit of a bend, various hand positions, but I can't seem to really eliminate the load. It isn't particularly heavy, but it doesn't really feel that great. Is this just the nature of the movement or totally safe, or is there any chance that this could actually become injurious? Probably not injurious. What you can do is bend the arms to a substantial extent and or use a machine where you only have to lift with your elbows. That could be an interesting solution.
Yeah, they have some like pec decks that you can flip backwards and do it like a reverse fly with your elbows only. I've seen that for sure. I would also say maybe just try like face pull variations and see if that's any better for you. If you can get a good connection there, if it's really bugging you. But yeah, sometimes that's just the nature of the movement for you, especially if you have long arms. It's just going to put a lot of stretch on that tendon for every time you do it.
For sure. Also, an analogy occurred to me tonight while talking about how MRV was intuitively understood and experienced by coaches and trainees, but wasn't defined as a concept until you guys wrote it in Scientific Principles, at which point it became something that can be explained in minutes rather than needing intuition from years of in-depth experience. As a parallel example, probably the most fundamental equations of electromagnetics are Maxwell's equations, which relate electric and magnetic fields. In Maxwell's original paper, they took up most of a page and were extremely complex as they covered all sorts of interactions in 3 dimensions. Then 20 years later, vector calculus was invented. Isn't it saying that somebody invented vector calculus?
It's
nuts to me how smart that person has to be. And suddenly, Maxwell's equations could be written clearly and completely in a few lines, providing a quick and profound expression of physical relationship to those with just basic understanding of the math, basic understanding of vector calculus. You know, that's a real
calculus.
In other words, with the volume landmarks, you guys have created the sports science equivalent of vector calculus. Mad respect. You know, Tony, you're cutting us way more respect than we are due. Those people are all our fucking superiors. But are we proud of the volume landmarks? Yeah, I think we are, James. Are we proud of them?
I'm really proud of it. I think it's definitely something that will be, I don't want to say like legacy, but it's definitely something that will pass on. You know, like when we're gone, that'll be something that people will still remember and use. And I think that's really neat.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's always going to be pertinent. Like when you talk to someone at a gym, more and more, hopefully it's going to be like, someone's going to be like, so what's your MEV or MRV? And they'll be like, what the fuck is that? Be like, you don't know what that is? Be like, yeah, well, how do you know how much to train? You're like, I don't know. I just got to get a pump. And you're like, you should probably read about it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And even if people aren't using those exact words anymore, maybe it kind of morphs into something bigger and better. That's awesome. But I think like putting that vibe out there where we finally kind of were like, enough, like there's a limit somewhere. There's a bottom threshold, there's an upper threshold, and there's a lot in between. Like, let's talk about it. And I think people will continue talking about it for a long time.
Yep. All right. Mircea Balaj. Okay, I just was corrected. I just read this. When training smaller muscles, hey docs, when training smaller muscles with medium, heavy, light days, should the heavy days be more like 10 to 15 reps, or should you still train muscles like rear and side delts in the 5 to 10 rep range? Sometimes they just don't respond in that range because they're probably not predominantly fast twitch muscles. Also, remember when you train rear delts with things like face pulls or bent barbell face pulls, those can totally be trained in this 5 to 10 rep range because they're compound movements, right? And side delts, they can be trained with upright rows quite safely. It's like Smith machine upright rows or cable upright rows in the 5 to 10 rep range by most people. And remember, the 5 to 10, as we talked earlier in this episode, can be in the 8 to 10 rep range or in the 8 to 12 rep range, which is close enough, right? So that's totally fine. Yes, should you train them a lot in that range? Well, it depends on which range they respond to the best. Shoulders tend to respond to the other ranges better. So maybe you can include a couple sets a week in the sort of 8 to 10 rep range for those movements, and then everything else can be higher.
And this is something you can trial and error yourself. Like try doing lateral raises for 6 reps. You're just going to feel like total stupid and awkward and heavy. Yep. Try doing a barbell upright row for 6 reps and you'll be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That actually felt pretty good. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things like you'll know right away, like, okay, this is not working. Same thing like we said with biceps earlier with Ansuman's question. I think, like you do barbell curls with 5 is just like a recipe for disaster eventually.
Sure. All right. And yes, Dr. Mike, you are saying my name right. LOL. At least my first name. My last name is with a J. I think Dr. James got it right a few months ago. Euro guy smoking a cigarette voice, but names don't matter anyway. And if you should just live your life and smoke and drink and whatever. Thanks as always, guys.
Brilliant.
Oh man, I guess Mircea is from I guess he's from Romania, I believe. Then if I is by his name, then yeah, the Euro guy is like really is more of a, I guess the quintessential Euro guys are Germany, France,
Yes, like
Italy,
Austria, Germany, France, Italy.
Netherlands. Yeah, that whole area is like, what is even the point of all of this? Like that's classic Euro guy.
Yes. Oh,
To a guy like that, you're like, hey, what do you think about Eastern Europe? And they're like, that is not really Europe. Everybody knows that. There's nothing is European. Like if you talk to a French person, there is no Europe outside of France, and so on and so forth.
yes. I was having a blast teaching Steve about Euro Guy when we were in Norway.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. The Nordics, the countries,
Because they're not like that.
No, they're not like that at all.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I remember we showed the video of Euro Guy to the Finland people. They thought it was fucking hilarious, but we never did show it in Austria because I don't know how that would go over.
Yeah.
Like,
Austria is like pinnacle Euro Guy.
You want to go to Europe? To Budapest rave? You're like, no, it's a joke. They're like, what is the joke? Is it the rave is good or is it just bad? You're like, never mind.
Like, just never mind. So anyways, let me tell you about what it's like. I fucking hate when Euro Guy tells you what it's like being in America. Like, okay, that's where I'm from, right? And they're like, no,
yeah.
You mean the place where they run over the black people with tanks? Like,
yeah,
what?
it's like, oh, it's a place where racism is legal. Like, yeah, because France is like a super racially harmonized country, right? Like, well, we have our own issues we're working through. It's really complicated here, but in America, it's simple as just hate. The thing is, like, to be fair to the Europeans, I can't imagine what it's like talking to a regular American tourist visiting Europe. You're like, hey, you're American. How is America? I can tell you what, man, it's got bald eagles.
For sure.
Country on earth. You're like,
for
are
sure.
You retarded or something? You're like, yeah, probably. Like, Christ. So like, you guys have European, stereotype guy. We have rednecks. So Australia really has us all beat because they have bogans, and bogans really just do rule.
The ultimate redneck.
Yeah, 100%. Redneck with zero shame, pure pride. No one's ever informed of what is it if you're a bogan?
Bogans don't know that they're bogans.
Real rednecks in the U.S., they know they're rednecks. They know they're not supposed to be talking like that shit, but they don't care. Bogans are just living life.
Oh man, I can't wait to go back to Australia.
That's gonna be so sweet. All right. Ido Dagul. Hi, docs. How's it been? Well, we don't rule the Orc Kingdom, so our lives are relatively easy compared to yours, but let's see what you got. When it comes to the bell curve for volume and hypertrophy, I always thought it might be missing a third variable of previous adaptations. Let me explain. So the volume that might benefit you the most at any point in time is also dependent on previous recent adaptations of certain volume as per the MEV range, how much stimulation you get from MEV after a deload versus after training there for weeks. I know it's nearly impossible to take this into account in research setting. When presented statistically in a two-dimensional bell curve, I think it makes people believe that the middle is always best and that you guys have argued extensively as to why it's not. Then maybe a 3D model with previous volumes performed as a variable might be a better representation. Yeah, totally. So one thing they've noticed now, for example, the frequency research, was that the people that grow best from the higher frequencies are the ones that are used to lower frequencies. And when you're used to higher frequencies, when you go even higher, sometimes you don't grow that much. So it's in many ways like, okay, you're used to this and you're well adapted to it. Now more is better. So how much volume you're used to already definitely shifts the curve. That's totally true. The good news is resensitization phases to some extent can mitigate that, which is a real benefit.
Yeah, and it definitely wouldn't be like a straight line kind of thing or like a middle under the curve. It's definitely more of like a scatter plot with like a snake trend line. It's not like a just totally linear thing either. So it's hard to put it out there.
Yeah. Number 2, Dr. Mike, when you plan your cut with no real deadline, which is what I'm doing currently, how do you then structure it? Just sandwich maintenance phases when needed and keep cutting? The periodization of training. Also, why have you decided to experiment with higher frequencies during a cut? Or did you start doing it during mass? I started doing it during a cut. Higher frequencies during a cut are not a terrible idea because your anti-catabolism stimulus is actually now more frequent. What you have to, what is a really bad idea to experiment with higher frequency or with during a cut is like excessively high volumes or excessively disruptive training. Higher frequency training is not excessively disruptive if you start at your MRVs for the sessions. So I think it's just fine to experiment with anytime you want. And mind you, I didn't start doing it in the middle of a mesocycle. I took a fresh meso when started, and it's worked out super great. How do I plan it with no real deadline? I just do a cut meso and no crazy metabolite shit. And then if I feel good, I plan another mesocycle. If you feel good afterwards, I plan another mesocycle. And I will end the cut completely if I need a maintenance phase. So I won't just sandwich a maintenance phase. As soon as a maintenance phase is required, I'll end it, rebound into a mass, and then take a maintenance. So
You got a show coming up for this one, though, right?
Yeah. So maybe, right? So the
Maybe.
idea is if I get into really good shape, then I will do a show. Jared Feather and I have a show planned. If you repeat this outside of RP Plus in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I will just completely deny that that's the case. Why, may you ask, am I denying that I may be preparing for a show if I'm in shape? If I find that my shape is not sufficient for me to reveal on a show stage, and I do not do a show, people are going to ask me, when's your show? And I'm going to be like, never. I'm going to be like, why? And I just have to answer the same question 50,000 times. Guys, this is the burden of being an Instagram celebrity, where the fuck kind of bullshit I am. You have to answer the same question a trillion times, or at least put up with it. And then if you put up with it and you don't answer it, you seem like a dick, right? So if I can just never have it asked, that'd be amazing. Secondly, if I end up doing the show, I'll just have the same question, like, hey, when's your show? How's your show? How's your show? Like, you prepping for a show? You excited? Is this peak week? Or are you blah, 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 loading? And it's just a bunch of shit. My show competition history, if you guys ever check on it, is awful because I never got the sports supplements peaking stuff right and dealt with a lot of body water issues. But now that I have Broderick working with me and hopefully I stay healthy, which is the plan, I'm probably going to look pretty sweet. And if I look sweet enough in the weeks leading up, which are pretty soon, then I will do a show. And hypothetically, that show would be in early May. And then I'll see you guys at the Revive Stronger RP seminar, where I'll be sliced and diced and jacked and all kinds of sick from sports supplements. I'm just kidding.
Eat all that wonderful English food.
I love it. I love English food, bro. I like shut your mouth, James. Where I'm taking you, you and I are going to go to all the little fucking convenience stores at least 10 times a day.
No, purgatory.
Tesco's. We're coming for you. I love like little shrimp sandwiches and
Sainsbury's and Tesco. And
Sainsbury's and Tesco's are my goddamn spirit home.
I'll go with you if you drink an old speckled hen.
I promise you, I will drink one old speckled hen in England.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God, you're a bigger man than me.
Gabby has to do it too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Good.
Ugh.
All right. Grab onto your seats. How terrible would it be to sequence a mini cut, maintenance, regular cut, as opposed to just a longer regular cut with maintenance in the middle, when the goal is to get real lean but not stage lean? Reason being is very easy initial fat loss given the higher body fat and no real desire to eat. Man, I think that's fine.
Yeah. I would also just say, like, you can weigh the like, I don't know, I guess I'm trying to say is I don't see how that's all that different on the net than just doing a kind of slow paced regular cut for that whole time.
Yeah. But if
it's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's totally fine. All right, last up for the regular questions, Luciano Bruno Kushel says, hello, Professor Dr. Israman. Ooh, that's like a superhero. For muscular hypertrophy, varying intensities with the same RIR can be translated to predominantly training fast twitch muscle fibers when training heavy, 5 to 10 intermediate muscle fibers when training moderate, 10 to 20 reps, and slow twitch muscle fibers when training 20 to 30 reps. Not necessarily exactly the case. Maybe a bit more of one type than the other in each one of those. All of them get trained in all of them, but it might bias a bit more to them.
Yeah.
Number one, you previously said that high rep sets and supersets were short rest train predominantly fast twitch muscle fibers as they increasingly become the fast burst fibers to fatigue. I don't believe I said that.
I don't think he said it that
supersets
way.
Maybe, high rep sets definitely not. As such, should supersets and high reps with short rest taking metabolite work be programmed as moderate, and high rep sets with normal rest periods be programmed as light? So I think we actually addressed this in the earlier stuff with Ansuman. So if you go back to Ansuman's question, Luciano, I think you'll get all your answers. You program the rep ranges as to what those reps would be if you did the set relatively fresh first set. That's it. The weights you're using correspond to 5 to 10 rep maxes, 10 to 20 rep maxes, and 20 to 30 rep maxes on a first set. That's what is the question, the weights. However, the reps lay out after, that's a function of rest times and a bunch of other shit.
Yeah.
Number two, if one notices that the moderate and light intensity ranges seem to be more stimulative, more DOMS plus pump, then the heavy intensity range should be prioritized not just with quantity, amount of work sets, but also with quality, exercise order. Probably not.
Yes.
For example, Monday, barbell bench press sets of 5 to 10, other non-chest exercises Thursday, other non-chest exercises, incline dumbbell press sets of 15 to 30 versus Monday, other non-chest exercises, barbell bench press sets of 5 to 10, Thursday, incline double press sets of 15 to 30, other non-chest exercises. Ooh, actually, this is a good approach because, so what I thought you were going to say is do sets of 15 to 30 on chest stuff in the first exercise or two, and then 5 to 10 in the others. But as long as you're doing non-chest exercises, I think you can do heavy stuff with the barbell bench at the end. That's totally fine. Where you're a little bit tired, plus you don't get much out of it. I think that's much better than what I thought you were going to say. So that being said, you still get more out of 5 to 10 with a good amount of central preparedness or lack of central fatigue. So I would still like to see, no matter the muscle and the effect, the heavy stuff earlier in the workout. Maybe not towards the end, maybe towards the middle if you really don't get much out of it. But
yeah. So I don't disagree with the programming, but where I was actually taking just a point was more precautionary. So what I was going to say is just be careful, because maybe not with the DOMs as much, but with the pump in particular, the moderate and light ranges are just going to be more subject to false positive if you're trying to make that type of assessment where you just have higher reps. You're just going to get more of a pump than you are in the 5 to 10 rep range more often than not, even if you are more fast twitch. It's just pumping a lot of action right there. So just my only point was it's not necessarily that they are more stimulative just because you get a big pump, and sometimes the lighter stuff can give you a false positive.
Other stuff, for example, mind muscle connection, the feel of tension through the muscle. So for example, on pecs, lower reps might not get you as much of a pump, but you can really feel a chest contracting. Higher reps might get you a pretty decent pump, but you can't really feel much going on in there. It just sort of feels. So all of those indices, including DOMs, have to be integrated. The pump is just one of them.
But yeah, the programming stuff I'm actually fine with. That was just the only thing I was just wanted to caution you on.
Yep. All right. And he said this would likely increase the quality, weight and reps of the incline dumbbell bench press, but decrease the quality of the barbell bench press. In other words, wouldn't this lead to better stimulation or specific dominant muscle fibers and possibly yield a greater muscular hypertrophic outcome? Just something I've been thinking about. I think fine, as long as you're not so tired for the barbell bench press that the sets of 5 to 10 take an even bigger dip in quality. And remember, to them, central fatigue is a real big thing. So maybe put them in the middle, maybe not the end, but I think you're probably on the right track.
The other thing too is like the barbell bench press also might be hitting a larger swath of that muscle.
Yeah.
And, so it might just be a wash at that point because the exercise itself is more stimulative for the entire chest versus getting a much better fiber type response in a smaller area. It's probably a wash, I would say, but I don't know.
P.S. Seeing pics of Mike on social media make it once again painfully obvious how bodybuilding is a game of illusions. Despite being dieted, quote unquote, or in parentheses, starved, down, you look freaking huge. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm actually pretty big, so I weigh about 220, and I'm at a low percent body fat. So we agreed that it's low. I have little bitty veins all over my hamstrings and quads. It's really strange. I wake up in the morning, what the fuck is going on with me? But it looks cool. It's a really fun time. I love it. Thanks for the props.
Yeah, you are looking mighty lean lately.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Instagram has been good to me. That's how I got lean, by the way. All right. I have myself another 12 minutes, JMO. But
yeah, I can pick up the slack if you got to go. No worries.
All right. Well, let's get started on the live feed with Michael Karam, who's up first. Hello, doctors. I have one more question. I'd like to get very detailed answers because of this. I'll try to be specific. First, I've read all of your books as mentioned before. I'm getting very, very good at results in my cutting phase. Excellent.
Awesome.
Number one, if the strength over time is important for hypertrophy, why are we focusing more on volume?
Yeah, I think that's just a misunderstanding. So one of the things you'll hear Mike say and myself say is like developing strength in certain rep ranges over time is a good way is indicative of progress.
Indicative, not causative.
Right, exactly. So there's just a distinction there. So one thing that we try to make clear, maybe we don't always do the best job, is we say, raw strength is not necessarily important for hypertrophy. They tend to kind of piggyback off each other pretty well to a point, and then they diverge at another point. So the volume is what's really going to be driving the hypertrophy. Hitting strength PRs in the rep ranges that you're working in is indicative of hypertrophy, but not causal.
Yes. So if you're not getting stronger in the rep ranges over time, you're doing something wrong because you're clearly not growing. But the way you drive growth is to focus on volumes and make small intensity progressions so that you can stay in those productive rep ranges. That's it. Number 2, does progressing in the load on the bar on low volume, like 6 sets per week, will produce hypertrophy over time? Yes, but very small amounts.
But just not that much.
Yeah, which is why take a look at what powerlifters do when they actually want to grow muscle versus get stronger. They stop training like what you just described in number 2 and start doing more sets and more reps, and they get bigger.
So the thing is, yeah, you can definitely progress in load and still see hypertrophy, but in terms of like the efficiency of what you're doing, in terms of the amount of effort you're putting in and the outcomes you're getting, it's just a shitty trade-off when you could just take the intensity down and do twice the volume and get twice the growth, right? And have less wear and tear at that point. So
by the way, Michael, sorry, it's not Michael, it's Michelle. Is it Michelle or Michael? Because it says Michelle right here.
I think it's Michelle. But like male Michelle is my guess.
Yeah. Just real quick, this has been studied directly in multiple studies. Every time they find that pushing intensity doesn't get you as much growth as pushing volume, plain and simple. So the answer is just directly produces less hypertrophy.
Yeah.
Number 3, doing 20 sets per one session once per week equals 10 sets per session twice a week? ? Is there a difference when being in a caloric deficit or surplus? I thought about it like that. If you do 20 sets per session once per week, you're in a calorie deficit, you'll lose muscle because you lost one session for increasing MPS. But if you're in a caloric, well, it depends. What if you increase double your MPS for 20 sets? So you got to move away from MPS, but we'll get to that. But if you're in a caloric surplus, you will not lose muscle if you don't stimulate your muscles again the same week. Totally. So that's like slight argument for increasing frequency when you're in a deficit. What I would say is there recent research has been showing something we suspected for a while, that there is a top end limit to per session stimulus. So there's a per session MRV and definitely a per session MAV. And that's probably in the 10 to 15 set range, not 20. So there's at least, there's multiple good studies. One excellent study showing that when people do way more than, actually in that study, 5 to 10 sets per session, they just stop growing. Like if you do 30 sets in one session, probably about 20 of them to 15 of them is just pure damage. And the first 10 are hypertrophy, and they probably cancel out, right? You'd be over your MRV and you just get shit.
Yeah.
So for almost everyone, 2 times a week training is better than 1 time a week training, because all of the sets are more productive. They don't get you so much per session damage that you have to just heal the damage, but they get you a lot of stimulus. And 3 sets per week is probably more productive for a bunch of people, and for some people even 4 sets per week, depending on the muscle group. So the whole 1 set per week or 1 session per week is not a good idea, because it highly limits your MRV and it runs into that damage versus growth problem.
Yeah.
Number 4, does decreasing the rest time between sets a way of increasing volume? Only if you add sets with the extra time, and only if the total number of reps and resultant sets goes up, especially the resultant sets. So you got to make sure that your total volume goes up in terms of rep counts. And if it doesn't, you're not actually increasing total volume. You're just resting less.
Yeah. So rest time directly doesn't affect volume at all, right? So we can say rest time and volume are two different entities. Indirectly, decreasing the rep time can actually just decrease your volume if you've kept the sets the same, because now you're probably going to get less reps per set in the latter sets. So the only way to adjust is either to add sets or be cognizant of your rep counts and stuff like that.
Number 5, does max OT 6 to 9 sets of 4 to 6 reps once per week for each muscle group good for hypertrophy, or is it just good for strength? It's probably okay for strength, but there's better ways to train for strength. I would say it's okay. Sounds fun.
That's a strength style program, but you're still constricted by the volume landmarks in the same way.
Anything called max OT, which I've heard of before, is fucking stupid. Sorry.
Yeah. And also, like, the thing that the one of the ways you can piecemeal like together, if this is something that you should be doing or not, is when they just give you a blanket, kind of sets guideline. Like the sets is just a highly individualized thing at this point. Like 4 to 6 reps is fine. That's like a very traditional strength range.
Yep.
But if somebody says you should be doing 9 sets, then you just know right off the bat, like you have no idea how many sets I should be doing. I don't even know how many sets I should be doing. I got to figure it out.
Exactly. Number 6, I know that doing any number of reps between 6 to 30% is equal for hypertrophy, or potentially equal. Does training in the higher reps of 15 to 30 will make you plateau faster because there's no neural adaptations and you can't increase your weights? You can absolutely increase your weights for a really, really long time. There is no research to suggest that you can't increase your strength in the 50 to 30 rep range. There's tons of neural adaptations in that range.
You still make adaptations.
You probably plateau faster, though, because a lot of the way that you grow in those rep ranges is via metabolite accumulation, and that tends to be a self-extinguishing process over the course of weeks instead of months. So you can do some training in that range for months and months and months, but if you do most or all of your training, about 2 months later, you're just not going to get super great pumps or anything like that, and you'll have to go back to heavier training to get your best.
Yeah, totally agree.
I've asked lots of questions, but I really like to understand things more and more about training because your books are really beneficial for me. I like to learn more and more. If we could do Skype conversation, it would be great because I need your help with training information. Thanks a lot, doctors. Sure, our Skype fees are like $1 zillion. This is probably about as close we'll get to Skype, but these are excellent questions, Michelle, and hopefully you're getting pretty decent answers. And dude, the reason you're fucking on RP Plus is because you want more information.
Totally.
Pretty good stuff. All right. Carl Milinkovic. Wonder how he says it, Milinkovic. Doctors, I've seen it mentioned in a few videos that one should take a diet break while deloading. Is this still applicable running the diet templates and the male physique template program, or one would return to our original base diet on the deload week? You can do that. You don't have to, because when you're deloading, you can just follow the regular diet, and because you're deloading, but you still get the same amount of food as normal, then it almost cancels out. I would say it's a small matter, but
it also depends on what you mean by diet break, because depending on what you mean, that often means a break from the diet entirely.
Don't break. Diet breaks I'm not a huge fan of that term at all. The 3DMJ guys use it and it's very well understood in their community, but in our community, it kind of gets mixed up with just falling off the wagon. So I'd say a return to maintenance is a really good idea. How you go about that, there's many ways to go about it. You can go back to base, you can go back to cut one. It really sort of depends. Just make sure you're not starving to death on your deload, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Up your carbs by a little. All right. John Podosic.
That's how I like to say it.
I'm trying to be American-like. Would like your thoughts on mesocycle programming, specifically set progressions. Usually I like to plan everything ahead of time. Some things cannot be planned ahead of time, John, so quick warning. So that I can make sure each micro looks sensible, as well as any volume increases micro to micro. Then I can auto-regulate the volume increases as the meso plays out. How do you both approach programming your own mesos? I start at MEVs, and I purely auto-regulate from MEVs and let my MRVs find me. And then I have a rough time where I think I'm going to be deloading. And as I approach what I know to be systemically more and more fatiguing weeks, I start to adjust my volumes, not as Napoleonically or more Napoleonically based on how many weeks I have. And I usually can deload at the right time most of the time. So it's auto-regulation with, as we get later into the mesocycle, a bit of an eye for how many weeks can I survive on this, and when should I pull forward a little bit to make that happen.
Yeah, largely the same here. The only thing that's notable, at least from a mesocycle perspective, is during cuts. You know, the MEV to MRV window shrinks a little bit, so it starts a little harder, but doesn't end quite as hard. So that's, other than that, same as Mike.
Yep. All right. I've been acting as my mom's personal trainer to keep her motivated to work out. That's very nice of you. He's like, I'm charging her $100 an hour.
Like, oh, dick.
She's 65 and has plenty of lifting experience, but isn't particularly strong. At her age, just wants to work out for longevity benefits, which means getting as strong as possible, by the way, in that case. Currently doing 2 at-home workouts a week that take between 30 to 45 minutes. That's all she can commit to until retirement in a few years. Full body, mostly compound movements, Smith and dumbbell bench, rows, leg press, RDLs, bodyweight squats. Given her age, you need some recommendations for the following. MV to prevent muscle loss. Would this be wildly different than normal recommendations? No, probably about the same.
Same.
RIR, until her technique is really good, I would keep her RIR between 6 and 2. But as her technique improves, you can let mom free the beast a little bit and go 4 to 1.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 to 4, but that was basically the same. Same recommendation.
Yep. Rep ranges, look for health and shit like that. It really just doesn't fucking matter. Anything from 5 to 30 works, but I would keep in the 10 to 20 rep range for the most part, because it gives a really good combination of heavy enough to stimulate bone growth, etc., and not so heavy that it's going to get mom fucked up.
Also, the margin of error is massive in the 5 to 10 rep ranges when you're working with, especially like older females. Like a 2.5 pound increase could be like devastating, which seems weird, but it's just true. So in that 10 to 20 range, you have a pretty good spectrum of weights you can use and progressions you can use that don't just totally go off in different directions.
Yep. Intensity techniques, given the short time frames, I got one really good one. Compound supersets. So you do some push-ups and then some rows. You do some squats and you do some shoulder presses. So muscles that are involved, superset them. You do one muscle, then the other muscle, and then you rest for 15 seconds and you repeat. Keep mom moving the whole fucking time. It should be a combination weight cardio workout. I mean, all of its weights, but it should be boom, 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 boom.
Absolutely.
Anything else, James?
No, just
focus on technique a lot. Don't get mom hurt by pushing weight. If it's one of those like, oh, just get these next 2 reps, it's okay. Like, it's never okay. Injury at that age is really, really bad. So just keep her technique super crisp and let the volumes and intensities grow over time. It's going to take a long time, but she's going to be in great shape.
Also, apparently you have a Smith machine at home, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I'd say 2 weight training sessions, 2 to 3 cardio, like walking cardio or cycling cardio. Good to go.
Yep, super. Number 3, been wondering this for a while. What's the corporate management structure at RP anyway? Is Nick Shaw CEO? It's on our website, so you can just go on RP and it says the whole thing. I picture him like Mom from Futurama.
Yeah, that's true.
Waiting for Ansuman to join RP and usurp Nick Shaw. Watch your mouth, because Ansuman has the power to usurp anything. He's usurped entire planetary systems before. Jesus Christ, I hope he doesn't come after RP next.
Yeah. Jesus.
Anyway, JMO, I got to run.
I got it.
Kumru is your last man of the night.
Got it. Thanks for hanging out.
All right.
Talk soon.
All right. Bye, guys. Bye, James.
Later. All right. Wrapping it up. Martin Kumaru. Hey, docs. Number 1. So I have been thinking about this question for a while. My girlfriend has epilepsy. If you do not know, besides being affected by flashing lights, things like vibrations, loud noises, and stress also trigger seizures. Now, before you go, we are not doctors specialized in epilepsy, yada, yada. I asked the experts, the doctor she goes to that specialize in epilepsy, and they essentially went, we've got no fucking clue. Because, as it turns out, there are not that many epileptics that lift weights, so they can't really get groups together for a study. So I'm going to ask you a hypothetical, though this is probably mostly a James question. Well, here we are. Hold on, I have to fart. Oof, hope you guys could hear that. I know that doing exercise is putting stress on the body. However, people that lift weights usually also tend to have more energy throughout the day and get less tired when doing regular physical activities. So my question is essentially, do you think lifting will be an overall plus or negative for her stress? And don't worry, if you say it's a plus, I'm not going to get my girlfriend to lift 40 sets a session to failure 6 days a week, because Mike and James said it's good for you. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm merely wondering what you think. She wants to do more, but I'm starting her off with 1 easy session a week for a month, just learning how to lift properly. If she feels good, we'll go up to 2 sessions a week and assess again in a month. Yeah, I think it'll be really good. I mean, as you already said, like I'm not an expert in epilepsy, as many people apparently aren't. I think it's probably a net positive to get her in the gym, doing some even cardio stuff, some weight training stuff. A little bit of both is probably a good idea, and it'll probably improve her quality of life in a number of ways. I would be careful in the sense that you might want to start her off just on some really, really basic stuff, some really low injury risk stuff. For example, although I'll be the first one to say high bar squats is usually a good exercise to go from. The last thing you want is for her to break into a seizure with a barbell on her back, right? So it might be good to do things that are like very safe in terms of that she could bail on, even if it was uncontrollably. That's when machines can become really handy, like leg press machine, good girl, bad girl machine, knee extension, knee flexion, chest press, rows, lat pull downs, all of those things like you can basically bail out on, and it's not a huge deal. When you get into the free weight stuff, it does get a little hairier. Things like dumbbell benching and rows are still pretty good. Like you can just dump them off to the side, but if it's above her face and she goes into epileptic seizure, might not be great. But yeah, I think, to answer your question a little bit more concisely, yes, I think it is a good idea. I think it's good to probably focus mostly on technique. As you kind of already were mentioning, start with 1 easy session, progress up to 2. And really, I would just focus on machines for now, just as kind of like a safety thing. And if she's not really doing a whole lot now and she's wanting to get more, work that 10 to 20 range, work the machines, work on getting good mind-muscle connection, get some cardio sessions in every week, and then just go from there. I think like what you're saying about teaching her how to lift properly, progressing once she's demonstrated competency, and you're not having any flare-ups or anything weird coming on, and reassessing every couple sessions. I think that's perfect. I think that's really good. Just, I would not necessarily go in the super heavy rep range. I wouldn't do like the 5 to 10s or less than that. I would just be cognizant, like the gym is a bright, loud, crazy place. I don't know if she has anything that really triggers her particularly bad. Gym, it tends to be like a very like bright, loud. Sometimes there's TV, sometimes the lighting is crazy, sometimes there's music blasting, sometimes there's crazy people. So play it by ear with that. But yeah, what I think you're doing is fine. I don't have any issues with it. Just, I would say, err on the side of safety. Like don't load her up with fucking like 135 pounds on her back doing a squat, and then she has a flare, an episode, and then boom, now it landed on her. So that's what all I'm saying is, I think you probably already know, but be smart. Okay, number 2. Mike has mentioned that he has to act differently around women due to his size, and I could imagine around men as well. As someone who has experienced this myself a bit, and some general prejudice, my girlfriend worried that I would snap and become violent because how calm and nice I constantly was seemed too good to be true for how big I was. Plus a teacher thinking that students making fun of me for lifting was hilarious and joined in, and the dean covering for them, saying it's my own fault because eventually people are going to make fun of you when you become muscular enough. What kind of dumbass logic is that? I was wondering how Mike has had to change his behavior over time as he got more jacked to avoid trouble, or whatever you want to call it, seeming to be intimidating. And if he has noticed any changes over time in how people treat him. Well, obviously this was more of a question for Mike, and I don't want to speak for Mike, but being a close friend of Mike, I can tell you one thing for sure is that Mike used to be, and he still is, but he was definitely, and Dr. Fiance, feel free to chime in on this one. Mike was one of the most extroverted people I had ever met. I mean, he still is, don't get me wrong. But we would go anywhere and he would talk to anyone about anything. He would say things that would make people uncomfortable, just, not in like a mean-spirited way, but just to be funny. And most people would get a laugh, some people maybe not. But Mike is definitely more careful about keeping kind of like comfort boundaries. So I think he's aware that, if you make an off-color joke here or there, that some people might not receive it very well. He doesn't necessarily approach everyone, though. When we travel, like, he'll still like talk to the waitress, the bus driver, like taxi guy, anybody who's willing to talk, he'll talk. But I think he definitely seeks out that extroverted behavior maybe a little bit less. He's definitely really good about staying calm and like keeping a very like good calm demeanor when he's serious. Like when somebody asks him a question, they'll be like, and if they disagree with him or they want to take contention with him, he doesn't like get worked up. He stays calm, explains his position very well because, like you said, he's a very big, muscular guy. What's the prototypical bro response when you get into an argument is to posture up, turn red, and start hurling insults at people. So Mike is very cognizant to not do those types of things, and he behaves himself very well under stress. I'm trying to think of other examples. Mel, can you think of any other things? Mel's bet Mike's friend even longer than I have. Yeah, that Mike, now given his now that he's become increasingly more muscular over time, has his behavior changed in any way to be maybe more sensitive to other people around him, to not be intimidating? Mel thinks he's the same. I think, like I said, I think he's definitely he's good about like staying calm. It doesn't get too like worked up all the time, even when he is mad or even when he wants to, hoot and holler at people. He does a good job of not doing it and not showing it. He's always polite. And he's always, Mel said most intelligent people aren't afraid of people who are bigger than them, which I agree. He's also like people, he's good at making jokes with people will kind of test the waters, like, hey man, like blah blah blah, what do you bench, like what do you do, like just kind of like weird bro stuff where they're kind of like testing you a little bit. And he's always good to make a joke. Like he loves like when we go places and people are like, God damn, you're big, whatever, he'll like take a picture with them or like make jokes about it. So he's very like kind, lighthearted person, and I think when people see him, they might be initially intimidated because he is a big, muscular guy. But when they actually hear him and see his personality, very rare that people will run and tear. Even the Thai people who are tend to be more small in stature, they loved Mike. And every time Mike would walk down the street, people would be like, damn. And then he'd make eye contact like, and they'd run over like, oh, big, 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 and want to touch his muscles and hang out with them and da 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 da. So yeah, I think, well, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to speak for Mike, but maybe we can revisit that next time. But that's my experience with Mike. Okay, number 3. Is a sudden loss of appetite normal in some circumstances? When I first started out lifting, my appetite pretty much got cut in half for 2 to 3 weeks. It happened when I first fell in love with my current girlfriend, again, for a couple of weeks. I'm just wondering if this is normal. Yeah, appetite can wax and wane. That's pretty normal. I would say some of the big modifying factors are, of course, physical activity levels and like previous day's nutrition. So you might find yourself not super hungry if you were like way overstuffed the day before and vice versa. What we find is that the activity effect tends to kind of be lagging, where you don't really start to see like ramping up hunger effects as a result from increases in physical activity for maybe several days, maybe even upwards of a week later. One thing that might be more kind of what you're getting at here, you can see massive changes in appetite as a result of stress and fatigue. So this can be physical stress, psychological stress, or combinations of both. It's actually one of the most classic symptoms of overreaching, this loss of appetite. So a lot of people will be like, oh man, when I'm overreached, I'm so hungry. It's like, no, that's actually usually completely wrong. Usually one of the ways you know you're overreached, at least in some capacity, is when your appetite just suddenly is gone and you're just not interested in eating. So it might be something like that, where maybe you had physical stressors, or maybe you were really nervous when you were falling in love with your girlfriend again or something like that, and just kind of stressed you out. Appetite went out. That kind of stuff's pretty normal. It's, yeah, I would say it's not terribly unusual. Tony always manages to find me in my best moments. James, he's got dick hands. Hoffman, yeah, I say a lot of dumb shit, man. I always find a way. Let's see. All right, got a couple more. Daniel Chali, are you familiar with the YouTube burper Yana G 1987-1? It's really, really fucking impressive. I'm serious here. Please check him out and let me know what you think. He's a burp. Oh, so he does like big burps. Okay, I'll check it out. Yanagi 1987-1. Okay. Oh, quick question. I couldn't find the information source of sumo wrestlers being the most muscular men in history besides hearing Eric Helm say it. So I don't know, but did they measure it with a DEXA, thus counting the water content of adipose tissue among their lean mass? I mean, a sumo wrestler versus a big Ramy for total muscle mass. You know, I don't know. I didn't actually look into that at all. So I'm just as in the dark as you. I think maybe if we were looking at like populations on average, like there's a lot more fucking giant, super muscular sumo wrestlers than there are big Ramys and Ronnie Coleman's. You know what I mean? So maybe I'm not exactly sure how they came about that. Maybe I'll look into it. Mel just hit us with the stat. The heaviest Japanese sumo wrestler was 580 pounds, right? So at that point, like, despite how fat they are, and as you mentioned, yeah, they're also carrying around a lot of water content as well. You better believe they're also carrying around quite a bit of LBM. So I'm not sure. Sumo wrestlers tend to be really big. I would say, apparently there was a 644 pounder as well. I'd be interested to see like sumo wrestlers versus like strongmen. But again, like how many Hafthor Bjornsons and Brian Shaws are in the world versus how many sumo wrestlers. There's a lot of sumo wrestlers and only a handful of those guys. So I'm not sure how they did that analysis. I honestly don't know, but it's kind of fun and interesting nonetheless. All right. I think I'm calling it a day. Oh, one more. Unagi's the guy whose burps sound like dinosaurs. He's amazing. Oh, okay. Oh, right on. I haven't seen it, but I'll check it out. Folks, we were on schedule this week, so everything's looking good. We're still having a bit of a website thing, but we've been able to just deal with it for now. So let's see. Next week, I'll be in town on Tuesday. We're not traveling. Yeah, so we should be on as normal. And I'll see you guys then. Had an awesome round of questions. You guys clearly have been putting a lot of thought into the bullshit that we say week to week. So it's really good when you get – I feel good when you guys get my wheels turning a bit. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your good questions. Signing off for Dr. Mike. This is Dr. James. Keep sending in questions, and we'll see you same time, same channel next time. Thanks.